Hi, my name is Mackenzie Tinnen, and I'm doing my book report on Okoye to the People. Okoye to the People is a Black Panther novel by Ibi Zoboi, who's made other works as an African and is a very well-known African American artist. She's made Black Enough, and Pride, and I believe she also made The Sun is Also a Star, but I could be incorrect. Okoye to the People is obviously about one of the main side characters in the movie, Okoye, who is a soldier and a part of the Dora Milaje. The themes of this book, though, tend to develop around corporate greed, the black communities, power, and understanding, as well as gentrification in some parts. But the book's plot tends to develop around the understanding and power of a community. The setting primarily takes place in New York. We're only in Wakanda for like a couple of pages in the first place, and it continues to transition between New York City and Brownsville. I believe it takes place 10 to 20 years prior to the events of the Marvel movies, since King T'Challa and King T'Chaka are both alive. T'Chaka is T'Challa's father, and he's also the Black Panther in this book. I also based it off of page 12 where Okoye is thinking, and it says that she can still recall T'Challa playing along the grassy edges of the palace wall as a little boy. Okoye in the person seems to be pretty headstrong and stubborn. She's also very observant. She often trusts her instincts and training at the Dora Milaje throughout the story, and it often guides her thoughts and ideas. She also develops a very deep sense of sympathy for the people that is around her, often feeling either bad for them or like feeling like this could change. The book begins where it says just a few years ago, Okoye was a village girl who would race other children through the bushes, over the hills, and down to the market. And for a second, we see how she came to admire the Dora Milaje since she wanted to be one since she's a little girl, or since she was younger, really. And she has such a deep admiration for it that she ends up joining and going on a mission with Captain NECA and King T'Chaka to a No Nation Left Behind or meeting, which is an nonprofit organization that tends to help small and poor countries. And even while going to New York, she still acts as if she's a part of the Dora Milaje, even though she's not supposed to, since countries believe that Wakanda is one of the poorest countries in the world, where it says, so she wears the duties of the Dora Milaje on her body and carries them in her heart. While in New York, she goes to a No Nation Left Behind meeting and meets one of our main side characters, Lucinda Tate, where it says the woman holds her hand out for Okoye to shake, and no one, absolutely no one, calls me Lucy. And Lucinda is seen to be a very friendly, seen to be a very friendly character and deep and caring. But right after meeting her, she ends up meeting one of the main antagonists, Stella Adams, where it says she certainly did not need a photograph to capture her power and control. And Stella is That's just foreshadowing, and Stella is kind of a character. She seemed to be very nice and kind to the king, because obviously he's the king and he's a part of her organization, but she's also kind of not snappy, but off-putting and a little racist towards other people, or like what she believes are commoners. And Lucinda, whilst before Okoye could walk away, ends up inviting her to Brownsville, which is she's since she's the councilwoman, to reveal their new community center. And Okoye tells Captain NECA and King T'Chaka about this, and he just agrees and goes. And when they get there, they are not really invited. And they are really kind of mobbed or righted out. And we get to see a Brownsville for a second where it's pretty rundown town. There are buildings that look like they've been set on fire. Some buildings look like they're still intact, and it's not looking pretty good there. While they're there, they end up seeing Lucinda, who is surprised that they're the only ones there, since she had said that she invited a lot more people. And the crowd who comes to reveal the building shows up, and they're immediately upset since they also expected more people to be there. And within that anger, they end up kind of shooing the king and Captain King, everybody, the king, Okoye, and Captain Neka out. And Okoye, seeing all of this, knows that these people can't be mad for no reason. Where it says that Brownsville is like a magnet, and Okoye feels a strong pull back to the place. And she she obviously is going to go back, despite Captain Neka and King T'Chaka's wishes, after seeing how the people reacted when they were there. She ends up going back, going to the community center where she sees Lucinda Tate, and while there, she ends up meeting another main side character, Tree, where Lucinda comments and tells Lucinda and tells Okoye about a drug known as pyrobliss, where it says when the buildings go up in flames from the pyrobliss serum, they leave behind a red tint in the sky. And Lucinda even continues from there, where it says word on the street is that Stella and her company created and dropped pyrobliss into Brownsville, illustrating, I guess, illustrating some or foreshadowing the events that seem to come. While there, she ends up meeting one of the main side characters, Tree, and her girlfriend, Mars. And Tree is and Mars are like rude to her, saying she knows nothing about America since she's African, and that they know nothing about her since, again, she's African. And they're kind of just being rude about her and commenting on her nationality and being a little ignorant towards that. But even though they are being ignorant, Okoye doesn't completely blame them and continues to like follow them around since she's more intrigued by Brownsville after finding about this drug problem that they have. And she ends up following Mars, who is Tree's girlfriend, and with a group of mutual friends that they have, is that they Mars leads the group to a dumpster before reaching behind it and pulling out a duffel bag, and the kids are and they end up following them, and Okoye ends up following the Mars and their mutual and the friends to a brand new looking apartment building, which is in the middle of all the rubble, where it says the kids are buzzed in and the gate quickly opens and slams and shutting behind them, and a huge letters outside the building, private property of no nation left behind, confirming to Okoye that Stella has some connection to the drugs being sold in Brownsville. Immediately upon figuring that out, she ends up telling Captain Neka and King T'Chaka, and they become and to like for the king's safety, he ends up distancing himself physically and in conversation wise from Stella upon figuring this out. And Okoye, like still worried about Brownsville, is like she keeps thinking about it since she believes the people of Brownsville are similar to the people of Wakanda. It's just two different nations. And while in their hotel room, they see on the news that Stella is going to Brownsville to open up a community center, even though previous community center that Lucinda built with her own money, no one showed up to. They have to go there since it's a part of the nonprofit and the king has to show face. So when they get there, the king ends up giving Okoye permission to like investigate the building and see what's going on, since they know that Stella has some connection to the drugs with happening in Brownsville. And when she goes in, she goes down, she ends up finding an elevator, taking it to go down, and like she found a basement warehouse where it's just full of the drug. It's basically a Breaking Bad chemistry lab down there. And she is down there and she ends up seeing Mars talk to some of her friends, And like she finds out through Mars that Stella is planning on putting pyrobliss into Wakanda and just repeating gentrification over in like a completely different country, where one of the kids say, again keeping up the facade, that Wakanda's too poor to even afford, the people of Wakanda are too poor to even afford the drug. And Mars comments that you could say the same about Brownsville or Harlem. When people want pyrobliss, they will find money. Bas- Basically, Stella is banking on the fact that these people will destroy their own city, their own community, just to get this drug, the euphoric drug. And once finding this out, Okoye immediately tries to leave, but she's cornered by some guards, and she defeats them with ease, and leaves the building through the roof, so nobody can like see her at all. So nobody can like see her and connect the king to this. And while running through the neighborhood, she runs by and ends up seeing Lucinda's building on fire. The building that Lucinda put her own money into building. And she tries to run in thinking that Lucinda's in there, and Tree immediately stops her and tells her that Lucinda isn't in there, and takes Okoye to like an old rundown house. Takes Okoye to like a rundown house where they end up meeting her cousin, and her cousin end up meeting Tree's cousin, and Tree's cousin ends up telling her about pyrobliss, and Okoye asks why they keep taking it, and he um tells her his honest reaction, since he also used to take the drug, and he said that you either feel terrible and try hard to stop, or you feel helpless and keep going because you think the damage has already been done, illustrating that some of these kids didn't even know what they were doing when they took the drug. They didn't realize the damage they caused until they saw what was left of it. And Tree kind of gets sad after hearing this. And Okoye seeing this is like, we are going to take back your neighborhood, and we're going to do it now. So she takes Tree and some of the other friends and Caleb, her cousin, to like the playground. And while they're at the playground, some kids, again, high off the drug, end up setting the playground on fire. Like end up setting like a couple of monkey bars and some swings on fire. And they end up putting it out. Like Okoye and Tree end up putting out the fire, and at the best time possible, Mars ends up showing up and is like, you can't defeat Stella. She has money, she has power, and she has resources. And Okoye is like, you know how these drugs are affecting these people. I mean, look at them. These are kids. And like Okoye and Tree says the same thing, and even has a breakdown where she's like, this used to be our neighborhood, and we used to love this place, and now look what we've done. Now look what they've done. And like because of that, Mars is like just, I think it sets in about the consequences of their actions. And though Mars was also addicted to it, she wants to stop, and she does end up stopping. But she's like, how did we let it get this far? And how did it get this bad? And like Okoye doesn't blame Mars for what happened, since she was under the influence, and it's not her fault that this drug was here. It's Lucinda's. And through this, a bunch of kids end up gathering around Okoye, Tree, and Mars, and they basically say how they're going to show the world the truth. And Okoye shouts, trying to motivate the kids to fight for the community, where it says, "It's going to show the world the truth, and you will take photographs and videos, and you will demand no nation left behind, get out of Brownsville, and you will shut it down." Which motivates the kids enough to where they actually end up planning a protest. And Okoye, after giving this amazing speech, runs runs back to find the king and Captain NECA, and they find out that Stella they think Stella may have planned for this to like show that the kids of Brownsville are criminals and addicts, and how the Stella is kind of the hero and the savior. So she tells them about the plan to like save Brownsville through protest, and they continue from there. Outside of like the community, and like what was it, King T'Chaka ends up telling him that like Stella is getting him removed from No Nation Left Behind, the nonprofit, after not because she found out about Okoye yet, but because he was like, I don't want to put this drug in my community or have you in my community at all. And she's like, okay, so you'll be removed from my plan. So he ends up being kicked out, and like right before, I think the day before they actually leave, um, they go visit the community center that Stella built, and they see a bunch of young adults and kids and teenagers protesting and screaming and shouting outside the building to get No Nation Left Behind out of their neighborhood. And within that chaos, um, King T'Chaka ends up telling Okoye to go find Tree, Mars, and Lucinda so they can get rid of Pyrobliss. So Okoye finds Mars first, and then Tree comes along, and they end up running to like the basement of the warehouse. And just as Mars is about to set this drug on fire, Stella comes out like a supervillain out of the elevator, and um, in the perfect timing with Okoye with her Komoyo bead, which is like a bracelet that can do everything. She records Stella giving a confession where it says, I should thank Lucinda myself, and why were you allowing some dusty Africans to get into your business? You betrayed me, Mars, after all I've done for you. And she throws Mars, Tree, and Okoye into like a steel box, about to like I let think actually like get rid of them, like kill them, get rid of them. But Okoye puts like one of her Komoyo beads after she gets us recording, puts one of her Komoyo beads at like the top of the steel box, which sends out a distress signal when the Black Panther just shows up and kicks butt and tears the steel box open and frees them. And they get out, and they're not that far away from the community center that Stella built. And as soon as they get in, they see that the drugs are already on fire since Stella's trying to get rid of the evidence, and she herself, in some weird form of, I think, poetic justice, or not really poetic justice, is high off of it. She's like in like very very high off of it. And like Tree and Mars immediately leave, go onto the elevator to like get out while the building is still on fire. But Okoye doesn't want to leave Stella there since she, one, believes that she has to answer to her crimes, and two, shouldn't like leave her since she's like a good person. And it says, and as soon as they get out, fire trucks come, and they like arrest and take Stella into the ambulance after she's done with her high, and like they arrest her because the Komoyo bead sent out the recording, and now it's sent out the recording of Stella basically admitting to putting the drug in the community and selling it in other communities. And because Okoye can't let the king be traced back to this incident, they immediately start to leave. They immediately start leaving, and before they leave, she finds Tree, tells them that they're going, and Tree throws and not Tree and Okoye throws Tree one of her Komoyo beads, and she's like, this is a part of my country, and she says it's as real as Wakanda, and it is as real as Wakanda from Okoye, and Tree says and as real as the Black Panther. And this very sweet moment, Okoye smiles and she says, "As real as Brownsville, Brownsville forever," being a play on Wakanda forever. And they leave and head back to Wakanda on the plane. And Okoye ends up keeping the phone that she was given to like keep in contact. And she saves Tree, Mars, and Lucinda's numbers, but she doesn't. And Tree Mars and Tree's name is replaced with an emoji for Tree because she's deeply rooted. Mars is represented as a sword to be determined and strong willed. And Lucinda is changed to a cityscape. And Okoye hopes that Lucinda ends up becoming a mayor of New York since she's such a loving and caring person. Yay! The story's over! Now, though the book had many themes and discussed a lot of problems, I believe the main theme was mostly about power. That being power to the people, where they had protests and fought for the community, and through understanding, where it's like Okoye basically saw the people of Brownsville as her people since she like sympathized with them and they were like they're just like the people of Conda or any other marginalized or like she associated them with the marginalized communities or oppressed communities of Africa. And it's also about like the power that corporations have, where the corporations have the money, the resources, the supplies to like do this. The main thing is that it's always power. It's power to want to change and to make those changes, to do good and do better, and to like make your community great again, which is what they ended up doing in the end of the book. Now, how do I feel? Oh, wait, the dislikes. Okay. Overall, I think the beginning of the book drags on for a minute, but then again, it's to show character development. But the endings, or like when it's ending, or the book is nearing its end, it's very fast. Like everything happens within like 60, 70 pages of one another. But I do like that Okoye had really good character development throughout the book. I mean, even in the beginning, she was like, something's off. But I like how that she ended up learning about gentrification and learning of drug use affecting black teens and of all other stuff. But I think still, after all that, certain characters like Lucinda were underutilized, even if she was like the main catalyst to get Okoye to go to Brownsville in the first place. But the author does do like a good job with depicting and understanding the effects of drug use on young adults and teenagers within the book. Now, how do I feel? I love how, or I find it really interesting on how they show the effects of drug use and illustrate how these kids aren't just getting addicted to drugs for no reason, and that like the system is actually rigged towards them so they're more likely to get addicted to this drug and stuff like that, or like they end up poor or they have to rely on certain things or like other stuff like that. But I also like how like because of that lack of control they had over their lives, they took this drug to like experience that kind of control, and how it's not just for no reason. They had their reasons. They just needed help to get through. They just needed help and love and support and community again to get through these times. But overall, I would recommend this book if you enjoyed the Black Panther movies. Though the some parts of the book did seem like a little kiddie to me, it's still a very enjoyable read as a high schooler. But overall, it's really good. To re-emphasize, a huge part of the book is power. It's either like power of your community or like the power. It's like a power of an individual versus the power of a community, which the power of community will often overwhelm the individual. But the book was very awesome, and I enjoyed that I got to read it. And these are my references. Anyway, have a good day.